Who actually caused the bite of 1987? The question that has been haunting the FNaF community since the beginning of time. The question that has divided us all and still does to this very day. The very first question ever dropped in FNaF by Phone Guy himself.
It's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe, you know?
Almost every animatronic has been accused of causing this, down to even Balloon Boy. Buckle up, however, because in this video, we set out to discover the truth about who really caused the bite of 1987 and who was actually bitten. For those who don't know what this bite even is, pretty much in 1987, there was a victim of an animatronic. Now, this victim is said to have survived, as heard in the previous phone call. We, however, do not know the animatronic, and we do not know the victim. So, what we know is that the bite of 1987 is a random animatronic who took a bite out of half of a victim's skull. Yeah, that's what we're left with. This is not to be confused by the bite of 1983, which we learn of in FNaF 4, where Evan's older brother, Michael, bullies him with his friends, forcing his head into Fredbear's mouth, where then Evan's tears trigger the spring locks, effectively killing him. Now, starting from FNaF 1, almost everyone had a theory revolving around a different animatronic. For example, Freddy has a handprint on his face, leading people to believe maybe there was some sort of struggle. When Foxy leaves his curtain to come running down the hallway towards you, he leaves a sign saying, "It's me." And when you begin hallucinating, you see "It's me," leaving even more questions unanswered. But every animatronic actually says "It's me" at some point in time, leaving theorists to speculate that the saying actually has nothing to do with the culprit and more to do with that's the only thing they remember how to say and is actually the animatronics trying to hold on to their dwindling humanity. What we do know, however, is that it actually isn't any of these animatronics. Why, you may ask? Well, we know the bite happened in 1987, and we know that FNaF 2 happened before FNaF 1, so the only establishment that could have been running is FNaF 2, meaning it had to be a FNaF 2 animatronic. Starting off, we need to absolutely rule out who it can't be. For example, I've seen people accusing Withered Bonnie, which isn't possible. He simply doesn't have a jaw to bite things, and not having a jaw or upper teeth would make this insanely difficult.
So just be aware, the characters do tend to wander a bit. They're left in some kind of free roaming mode at night. Something about their servos locking up if they get turned off for too long. They used to be allowed to walk around during the day too.
Another point to make is in the phone call, Phone Guy specifically says the bite happened during the day and blames it as the sole reason the animatronics are not allowed to free roam the establishment anymore. Therefore, it can't possibly be Withered Bonnie, Withered Chica, or even Withered Freddy, as Fazbear wouldn't have let them free roam around kids. As stated by Phone Guy, they are left in storage for parts, and they stink. FNaF 2 also stated that Foxy was most likely in storage and locked up, so not him either, as he and none of the Wizards would have been around kids, unless the victim wasn't a kid. Balloon Boy I've also heard blamed quite a bit. Yeah, no. Out of every animatronic, it simply doesn't make sense. How could he possibly accomplish this? He has no teeth and is the smallest animatronic. He also isn't aggressive. Don't get me wrong, he's annoying, but he's actually never attacked the player. He just stands there laughing like a creep. So him causing the bite just doesn't make sense from behavior he's displayed in the games. This leaves the toy animatronics. Now, many people blame Mangle, and surprisingly, a lot of you support this theory. The reason for this being the angle at which Mangle attacks the player, which is her coming directly down from the ceiling and jumping in your face. This, however, is literally the only piece of evidence anyone has for this claim. Other animatronics, such as Foxy, also lunge in your face. Something else we notice is Mangle's actually in the back on the cameras in parts and service, along next to the Wizards. Fazbear definitely wasn't letting her wander around people anytime soon, as they wanted to keep their image. So who was it then? Who could have actually caused the bite? And more importantly, who could have actually been bitten? Well, for that, you need to dive way deeper into FNaF lore and take a look outside of just the games. You see, I recently just got a book called The Week Before, which I highly recommend if you're a fan. And this book drops lore dump after lore dump for you to piece together. It was also officially published by Scott Cawthon himself. And while we know the lore is slightly different in the books versus the game, we also know the big events to be mostly the same. Well, why am I bringing this up? Because I believe this solves the long-awaited mystery. In this interactive series, we actually play as Phone Guy, also known as Ralph, who highly respects the Fazbear Enterprise and doesn't believe any of the shady rumors. As we go through this book, however, he mentions the victim of the bite and blamed the victim for provoking the animatronics, leading many people to believe the victim was, in fact, an adult. Several staff throughout the series also joke about being meat instead of being part of the team, referring to themselves as meat. This theory dives deep into a rabbit hole, but at the end of it points towards Foxy, as a staff member runs out of battery in their flashlight and then gets attacked. However, I don't actually believe Foxy caused the bite. As Phone Guy specifies, it happened during the day, and I find that detail to be irrelevant if the culprit really was a staff member. Don't get me wrong, while Foxy is the most erratic animatronic, I don't understand why he wouldn't fully kill the staff member. Why only take half his skull? He was alone after all, with no help. Wouldn't it make more sense if there was perhaps someone there to help? For example, to stop the animatronic before it could attack further, to pull the animatronic off of the victim. For this reason, I don't believe it was Foxy. That leaves Toy Chica, Toy Bonnie, and Toy Freddy, all who would have been at the birthday party Fazbear happened to be having. So here's what I think happened, and it might surprise you. It's a Saturday afternoon, and there's about a dozen kids and a few staff throwing a birthday party. The animatronics are behaving as normal and interacting with the kids, but progressively, one of the kids gets a little more touchy. If you look at the posters in the FNaF 1 hallway, the first rule stated clear as day is don't touch Freddy. And we could assume by that Fazbear most likely meant all the animatronics, not necessarily him specifically. Nothing besides that really links Toy Freddy or Toy Bonnie to the bite, but something, or well, two things, could actually link Toy Chica to being the culprit.
Where's my beak? Lodged in your forehead, of course.
And we also know from games such as FNaF 4 and the FNaF movie just how aggressive Chica's cupcake can be. Thirdly, we also are very aware how Chica is about food, which would be plentiful at a child's party, as she can be seen in the kitchen in every single FNaF game. So personally, I believe it was Toy Chica. A kid was getting touchy, maybe trying to grab the cupcake, or simply enjoying pizza, and Chica snapped, biting the kid before being attacked by the staff member and shut down. Or even possibly, it was even her cupcake, as it's small enough where it can do serious damage, but may not instantly kill you. People also believe that the cupcake might be possessed by a dog. Now, I'm not sure how true this is, but if it is possessed by a dog, I think a dog attacking someone's face makes a lot of sense. I believe out of all the evidence we have for every animatronic, Toy Chica by far makes the most sense. Of course, however, a lot of this information comes from Ralph, the Phone Guy himself, and we actually don't know that much about Phone Guy. So in this video on screen, I actually delve deep into the lore and explain who Phone Guy is, how he died, and his past background.